Ladies and gentlemen, welcome once again to the Packernet Podcast. I am your host and resident panelist, as always, Ryan Schlipp. Check us out online, Packernet.com. Find me on Twitter, Pack_Dada. I thought today we'd have a little bit of fun. It is bye-week week, even though we do have to turn our attention to an actual game pretty soon. I was thinking about doing this maybe on Saturday, and then I thought, we can kind of twist this. So I just did Packernet After Dark for last night. And, of course, it's still pretty negative. It's still Monday. Everybody's still mad. So I had a thought, what if we just lean into it? Team is bad. Team sucks, right? Bad team. Not good. All right, fine. That's what we're going to do today. Team is bad. Really bad result this year. Unacceptable result. Missed the playoffs. Bad. All right? And so what does that mean? Well, unfortunately, things are so bad, we're going to have to look for a new head coach. Okay? We're going to have to look for a new coaching staff. Maybe offensive coordinator, probably not defensive coordinator, but we can talk about that. We'll see how that goes. There may be some situations there. And it turns out that this situation is so ugly, with guys not taking steps and some just one too many mistakes. And so we're probably going to have to get ourselves a new GM as well. So, new coach, new GM, and with that, we're going to have to find ourselves some players to get this thing off the ground. We got some good players, but, this new coaching staff, we're going to need to bring some people in. We don't have our first-round pick, but still a good time to take a look at some potential prospects at positions of need. And who knows, maybe we'll just end this thing with a mock draft. What do you say? Why not? I haven't really dipped my toe in the draft at all. I think I deserve some credit for that. Considering I like doing mock drafts for the next year, like 5 seconds after the draft ends. So that's what we're going to do today. All right? All right, then. So why don't we start with head coach? And the way I kind of mentally broke this down is in 3 categories. All 3 center around Jeff Hafley. Here's why I say that. Option number 1 is that we hire Jeff Hafley to be our head coach. That makes a ton of sense, assuming it makes sense at the time. If we decide Matt LaFleur is not the guy, Jeff Hafley is not only very good with defense, he is first of all, former head coach, even though that was in college. He does have some head coaching experience. He's a very well-known and well-respected guy, which is important with players, with the locker room, but also going out and getting talent, which we've seen he does a masterful job when you look at the pieces he's been able to bring in on that defense. Now, maybe that's Matt LaFleur. I don't really know. But then also I think his biggest asset, aside from just being an intelligent defensive mind, is how good of a teacher he is. As a coach, being able to teach your players how I want you to play football. I think you put that all together, you've got a really solid head coach. The other 2 options. Matt LaFleur's out. Jeff Hafley has a few interviews to be a head coach. It doesn't fully pan out, probably in part because of the Packers' lack of success. And he ends up staying the Packers' defensive coordinator. Now, there's no absolute rule that if you have a solid defensive coordinator, you have to get an offensive head coach. But I think in general, you're usually looking for an offensive-minded head coach. And it's good to pair with a guy like Jeff Hafley, so that's probably the direction you'd be leaning. Third option, Matt LaFleur's gone, Hafley gets hired away. In that case, it becomes a little bit more of a clean slate, and there may be some experienced culture-building type of guys. Guys that are going to maybe instill something a little bit more along the lines of a disciplined team. Nobody's perfect, so they're going to have some deficiencies, but obviously discipline is a concern, and so you go in that direction. That may or may not end up being a defensive-minded guy, but you're starting with a clean slate in that direction. You're looking for a more culture-building guy, and then you got to look at, offensive and defensive-minded people to come in and be your coordinators. So why don't we start with the easiest, which is Hafley gets hired to be our head coach. I'll tell you what, I just had an idea. Maybe instead of doing this separately, we kind of do it all together, because I'll tell you what, depending on who the coach is, might dictate a little bit what direction we go in terms of college football prospects, et cetera, et cetera. Some of you guys might find this lame. I find this entertaining. So we're going to have some AI-assisted podcasting today. I'm not talking about a guy's voice. It'll be me talking. But this is good enough that I think I'm going to run with this, as opposed to just using it as a personal guide. I want to actually read this. So I had AI come up with a little bit of a Jeff Hafley press conference here. And the press conference is about, so Matt LaFleur is fired, Jeff Hafley gets promoted, initial press conference, and of course the general questions of how do you plan to lead this team, et cetera, et cetera. And again, the only reason that I'm even entertaining this, reading this out loud, is because this actually sounds pretty legit. And since we're kind of role-playing and having fun here, let's just lean into it. All the answers are relatively short, but I think these are pretty on point to give you an idea of what the team looks like. First off, I'm honored to be the head coach of the Green Bay Packers, organization that has a legacy that means something. My job is to make sure the product we put on the field reflects that legacy. Fast, physical, disciplined, and smart football. That's what we're going to be about. On his coaching style, I believe in teaching. Everything we'll do will have a purpose, from how we line up to how we finish a tackle. I'm not a scheme guy for the sake of scheme. I'm a fundamentals and communications guy. If we play sound defense, tackle well, and eliminate mental errors, that travels anywhere. Rain, snow, playoffs, doesn't matter. I like that because I feel like I can put myself in that situation of listening to that and saying, dude, that's for sure. That's what we're looking for. On his culture, we're going to play with energy and unity. No freelancing. 11 guys tied together. You'll see a defense that runs and hits. On offense, I want us to attack, play with pace, dictate, not react. And in every phase, we'll be detailed and relentless. On some changes you might see with the team, we're simplifying communications on defense, fewer calls, faster reactions. We'll be emphasizing tackling angles, pursuit, and creating turnovers. Offensively, I want balance, but more than that, I want precision. The details will matter. And special teams, that's going to be a weapon, not a liability. Field position wins games in this league. As far as his core identity, Hafley's philosophy is rooted in discipline, speed, and teaching. He's not a scheme innovator like Ben Johnson. He's a technician and culture builder. Expect him to focus on being the best coached and most fundamentally sound team in the NFC North. All right, so there's the press conference. But the man needs coaches. I'm not going to dive super deep in, but he needs an offensive and defensive coordinator. Now, when it comes to defensive coordinator, I think an internal hire makes a ton of sense, and you could say this is a relatively easy decision, but let's talk about a couple options. I think the easiest option is DeMarcus Covington. He's our defensive line coach / run game coordinator. I think most people have been very impressed with him and what he's been able to do. In addition, he is a former defensive coordinator that has a ton of buzz about him in terms of his prospects. That is to say, he's unlikely to stay on our squad as a defensive line coach / run game coordinator. It's possible, but there's a good chance he gets a defensive coordinator job. The other guy that I would consider, though, is Derek Ansley. He's kind of in the same boat. He is the passing game coordinator, so he's kind of on the same level. He is a former defensive coordinator, extremely well-respected, talented guy. And although I think all things being equal, DeMarcus Covington probably would get the nod, I do think it's worth remembering that Jeff Hafley is a DB guy, and it's possible it may work to his advantage, or he wants a sort of DB guy working with him in Derek Ansley. But for the sake of keeping it easy, let's go ahead and say that DeMarcus Covington is promoted to defensive coordinator. He decides to stay along with Jeff Hafley, and why wouldn't he? Ansley, on the other hand, another reason to keep him in his position is he's probably less likely to get hired away as a DC. It's certainly not impossible, but his time as a defensive coordinator wasn't super great. In fact, it was pretty awful, so that may buy us a little bit of time. As far as the offense goes, I can't imagine Hafley would be super excited about keeping Matt LaFleur's staff on board. There may be a couple holdovers, but I have a feeling there's going to be quite a few that are gone. Sean Mannion, as the quarterback's coach, probably has a good chance of staying. I don't honestly know who else would stay. I mean, Stenovich is for sure a LaFleur guy. If he was our offensive line coach, you could maybe see that, but I don't think I want to keep him as an offensive coordinator. Butkus isn't going to stay. I don't know. Can't imagine Luke Getsy hangs around. Probably be a couple holdovers. But all in all, I want a new offensive coordinator, and I want to work with that person to figure out who is going to come along with. Now, couple of options, but considering it's impossible to guess any of this stuff, we might as well keep it a little bit fun. And two thoughts come to mind. One is to poach from the Lions coaching tree, just because they obviously are the hot team as far as offense goes. Tanner Engstrand is part of Ben Johnson's tree. Currently the Lions pass game coordinator. Certainly somebody to keep an eye on. However, again, for the sake of having fun, I mentioned how Dak Prescott is playing at an MVP level. He's playing very, very, very well. The Dallas Cowboys quarterbacks coach is Steve Shimko. He was promoted in 2025. He does have experience calling plays in college and adapting schemes. And he also was the offensive coordinator for Jeff Hafley at Boston College. So then the only question becomes, what do we do? How do we build this team moving forward? What do we change? And this one's actually pretty easy because the Packers, potentially their biggest need is Hafley's bread and butter, which is the DBs, the cornerbacks. And so with that, the first pick made by Jeff Hafley is the 6'1", 196-pound Domani Jackson cornerback out of Alabama. Long story short, sales pitch. He's the press corner for the modern era. Long, fast, nasty in the run game, and with enough upside to grow into the mirror guy that makes any wide receiver's life miserable. So Jeff Hafley is the head coach. Steve Shimko is our new offensive coordinator. DeMarcus Covington is our defensive coordinator. And our first pick of the new era with some GM, maybe it's Hafley, I don't know, taking more time than I thought, so we might just do coaches, is Domani Jackson, cornerback out of Alabama. All right, let's take a break. We'll come back and look at scenario number dos. All right, so scenario 2, let's say the head coaching search doesn't go very well for Hafley. He remains our defensive coordinator. The defensive staff remains largely the same. The Green Bay Packers, Ed Policy, and whoever the GM is, we'll leave that alone for now. They have to begin the search for a new head coach. In this scenario, we really need to try to find a new Matt LaFleur. Ideally, a really good leader, but we need an offensive mind. And ideally, somebody who comes from an offense that is at the tip of the spear. In this scenario, the Lions have already been kind of picked. I'm not going to say picked clean, but the man has been taken off the top. But there's still a very good offense that's out there that's been flying around picking people apart with an offensive coordinator whose name has already garnered quite a bit of buzz. That man is Joe Brady, the Buffalo Bills offensive coordinator. Brady is just 36 years old. He is a young, fast-rising guy. He began his coaching career at William & Mary in 2013. So he is brand spanking new to this. He went to Penn State just 2 years later as a grad assistant. He went into got a job with the Saints as an offensive assistant in 2017 through 2018. Got his first actual coaching gig that very next year in LSU, and it was passing game coordinator and wide receivers coach, which is a heck of a jump. And it was at LSU, which is not a small program. Just 1 year later, he becomes the offensive coordinator for the Carolina Panthers. I don't know how that's possible. I don't know how you're a grad assistant. Then the Saints hire you as an offensive assistant. 2 years later, you're a pass game coordinator and wide receivers coach for a major college program. 1 year later, you're the offensive coordinator for an NFL football team. 2 years later, he's the quarterbacks coach for the Bills. 2 years later, he's interim offensive coordinator for the Bills. 1 year later, he's the offensive coordinator for the Bills. He's been doing that for 2 years. The guy has never held a job for more than 2 years, ever, without moving up. I'm watching the 4-0 Bills team right now, and I'm telling you, this guy is about as fast-moving of a coach as is out there. Again, at 36 years old, he's already an offensive coordinator, which he was already in 2020, which was 5 years ago, which means he would have been 31 years old when he got his first gig as an offensive coordinator, which is just 2 years removed from just being an offensive assistant. 5 years after being a grad assistant at Penn State. It's 4 years. In 2016, he's a grad assistant. 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020. 4 years later, he's the offensive coordinator for the Panthers. What in the world? Joe Brady's going to come in as an offensive coordinator with a mentality of defend every blade of grass. It's pretty similar to Matt LaFleur and the Shanahan concepts of spreading out the defense both horizontally as well as vertically. He said he likes to get speed into space, which makes sense, especially would be a good fit for the guys we have because we have a lot of speed. That means getting guys like Matthew Golden open and into space so that you get him the ball and he can go get lots and lots of yards. He also has an everybody eats mentality, which means he likes to distribute the ball around. So again, pretty similar to what the Packers have been used to for quite some time. Joe Brady obviously comes from a successful program, so he has some concept of how to run a successful program. His everybody eats mentality tends to lead to a locker room full of happy people. He works really hard to make sure everybody, we're not really locked into this hero thing. So we're hopeful for some good locker room vibes. And there'd be a good amount of trust between Brady allowing Hafley to run the defense and Hafley trusting Brady to be able to install his offense. He's going to let Hafley deal with the defensive coaching staff, but as for the offensive coordinator, we won't go through the whole list of coaches, but a good OC to work with. And this might be a little bit of wishful thinking, but I'm going to go with it anyways. Here's the backstory and how this all works out. The Giants' season doesn't go very well. A lot of people end up getting fired, and that includes their assistant head coach / offensive coordinator, Mike Kafka. 38-year-old is a former quarterback in the NFL from 2010 to 2015, playing with 7 different teams. Got his first actual coaching gig for the Kansas City Chiefs in 2018. 2 years later, quarterback coach, pass game coordinator. 2 years later, he's the OC for the Giants. 2 years later, he's assistant head coach and offensive coordinator. Again, he's more likely to be a head coach than an offensive coordinator, but we're going to go ahead and say that there's some wishful thinking here that staff ends up getting moved on from and he doesn't get a head coaching gig. As for the Packers' first pick under Joe Brady, very sorry to our defensive coordinator who is screaming for a corner, but Brady's all about his pass game. He's all about his quarterback. I desperately want to get a wide receiver, but I feel like we've already kind of solved that issue in multiple ways. So instead, the Green Bay Packers are looking to bolster the offensive line with Auburn interior offensive lineman Connor Lew. Where on the interior he plays, I don't really care. We know Zach Tom is going to be our right tackle. We know whether it's Rashid staying at left tackle or Jordan Morgan taking that spot, we have a left tackle. I don't like our left guard. Our center situation is something that even if we figure it out, he's going to be 40 years old by the time it starts working in Elton Jenkins. And Sean Ryan is just not a good right guard. The interior has to get fixed. So we start trenches and we start offensive line with Connor Lew. So, to recap, in scenario 2, Jeff Hafley remains our defensive coordinator. The Packers go out trying to hit a home run with a new young stud offensive play caller team from the team that won the Super Bowl, because I can make up whatever I want, the Buffalo Bills. They decide now is the time to pounce for the greatest offensive mind in football in Joe Brady. We decide to make the move. Joe Brady is now our new head coach. We're very fortunate to retain Jeff Hafley. The Giants just blow everything up, decide, take all your crap and get out of here. Joe Brady immediately reaches out to Kafka and says, come on over here, you can be our assistant head coach because our special teams coordinator is gone. We're going to get a new one of those anyway, so he doesn't retain that title. You can be the assistant head coach / offensive coordinator over here. Let's put in some work. Let's go win a championship, and then you can go be a head coach somewhere else. But in the meantime, come on over. And they immediately get to work building up the offensive line so they can turn this team into what you see in Buffalo, which is an offensive powerhouse. They not only bring a more disciplined team and a more creative team, but who knows, maybe we get to use Jordan Love's legs a little bit more, similar to what Josh Allen does over in Buffalo. All right, let's take our final break. When we come back, we'll take a look at our third and final scenario, and that is the worst-case scenario where we lose Matt LaFleur because we fired him, and Jeff Hafley gets hired away to a new team. He says, screw this place, I'm out of here, and we got to start from scratch. We'll take a break. We'll be right back. All right, third and final scenario. We're starting over from scratch, and because of that, we're not going to focus as much on finding an offensive mind or a defensive mind. We need a culture guy. We need a guy who can come in here and rebuild this thing, rebuild the locker room, and then he can just hire the offensive and defensive minds. But we need a guy that can put together a vision for the team. And so since we're being weird, why don't we get a little weird? Looking for somebody that is a culture guy. We need a CEO of the locker room, of the people. You know what I mean? We're going similar to Hafley. He is a NFL college hybrid guy. Started off in college, as most do. Made his way to the NFL. Went back to college where he made a real big name for himself, and then came back into the NFL. And we're going to give him his first crack as a head coach. And that is Jesse Minter. Jesse Minter is a defensive guy. Many of you already know who he is, but for those that don't, he's 42 years old. He was at Notre Dame as a defensive intern, grad assistant in Cincinnati, linebackers coach at Indiana State, and then DC at Indiana State from 2011 to 2012. He then went as a defensive coordinator for Georgia State 2013 to 2016, before finally getting into the NFL for the Baltimore Ravens. He was a defensive assistant, then assistant DB coach, then a defensive backs coach in 2020. He went back to college to kind of do that backwards, forwards thing. He was defensive coordinator and safeties coach for Vanderbilt in 2021, and then really made a name for himself when he was the defensive coordinator at Michigan 2022 and 2023. When he got there, the defense had just been gutted. Within 1 year, he built the nation's #1 scoring defense and turned a fractured unit into a tight, accountable, talented unit. He built a leadership council of players, held everyone to film room honesty, and emphasized earned confidence. By year 2, Michigan's locker room was described as, quote, the calm voice that everybody listens to. He is a player-first, accountability-always leader. When you talk to players who've had him, they use words like transparent, steady, and genuine. Minter doesn't motivate with rah-rah speeches. He earns buy-in through clarity and fairness. Everyone knows what is expected of them. Mistakes are corrected, not shamed. Standards never drop, even for stars. After 2 years in Michigan, he went on to be the defensive coordinator of the Los Angeles Chargers. That's what his job has been from 2024 as well as this year in 2025. He is another benefit. He's a guy that people want to work for. If you're going to bring in a head coach, he needs to be somebody that can pick up the phone and have somebody drop everything to come be his offensive or defensive coordinator. There's a couple people that have followed him over there because of who he is. I'm not going to name drop yet because it's possible they're going to be our offensive and defensive coordinators. But position coaches and analysts from Michigan and Vanderbilt still keep in touch, hoping to reunite. Best culture guys like Tomlin, Campbell, and Dungy share a trait, emotional control. Minter has it in spades. He doesn't melt down on the sidelines. He doesn't air grievances through the press. He communicates directly, respectfully, and consistently. Jesse Minter is not a scheme hire. He's a standards hire. He'll build the locker room build Green Bay from the locker room out, set a tone of professionalism and pride, and make Titletown feel like Titletown again. Now, as far as offensive and defensive coordinators, I had considered Covington again as defensive coordinator. I think that makes a ton of sense, but we did that already, so I decided against it. And I figured since we were getting weird, let's just lean all the way into it. One of the guys that has spent some time with him, especially on the defensive side of the ball in Michigan, which is where he made a name for himself, so it makes sense he'd want to kind of work with somebody there, somebody that followed him to the Chargers and is the defensive backs coach there and has been with him the entire time, Steve Clinkscale. Steve Klingsale is 48 years old. He spent his entire career in the college ranks. He ended up in Michigan the same time as Jesse Minter, was even co-defensive coordinator / defensive backs coach in 2022 and 23, and then followed Minter to the Chargers to be the defensive backs coach there. He's going to come to the Green Bay Packers and be our defensive coordinator. Core philosophy that you're going to get on defense, coverage versatility. He is a match quarters disciple who can morph to cover 1, cover 3, or 2-man depending on the opponent. Aggressive man principles, so we got middle field close, which is similar to what we've been doing. Aggressive man principles, which is at least what we want to be doing. It's similar core concepts to Jeff Hafley style. Corners are taught to press, mirror, and win with leverage. And then there is too high structure with disguised rotation, which essentially means we're going to show you too high, but we're going to rotate to something else. So it always looks a certain way, but you never know what it's actually going to be. And then tackling and leverage discipline. Every call is built around forcing the ball inside to help. There is no free yards. That's a welcome relief for the, bend don't break averse Packer fans who are so tired of handing somebody 5 yards because at least it's not 6, In terms of the types of players that they like in corners, long, physical, confident press players who can flip his hips and tackle. Think Jair type, not just finesse corners. Jair wasn't necessarily long, but there you go. Safeties, versatile, interchangeable. One can drop into a box, the other can handle quarters deep. Smart, pure athleticism. Linebackers, range and eyes, must diagnose quickly, fit inside-out, cover backs and tight ends in space. Edges, twitchy, versatile rushers who can drop or loop in sim pressure. Defensive line, strong hands, discipline, gap control, not freelancing penetrators. So that is going to be a difference when you talk about the front. All right, so that's the defensive side. On the offensive side, we need a guy that can kind of handle their business on the offensive side. He can be the head coach of the offense. And again, we're going to work with a guy that's worked with Minter and is working with Minter right now, and that is the Chargers offensive coordinator, Greg Roman. That's right, Minter's going to be able to get him to come over to the Green Bay Packers. How? I don't know. I don't care. Shut up. He just is. Offensive coordinator / head coach assistant. I don't care. But Greg Roman has been around for quite a while. He was the offensive line assistant back in 1995 for the Carolina Panthers. He's 53 years old. He was the offensive line assistant, a tight ends coach, a quarterbacks coach, O-line assistant again for Baltimore, offensive coordinator in college, associate head coach at Stanford, offensive coordinator for the 49ers back in 2011 through 2014, offensive coordinator for the Buffalo Bills, senior offensive assistant and tight ends coach for the Ravens, assistant head coach and tight ends coach for the Baltimore Ravens, offensive coordinator for the Baltimore Ravens 2019 to 2024, and now offensive coordinator for the Chargers. So he's been an offensive coordinator for like 4 different NFL teams, held titles like senior offensive assistant, associate head coach, assistant head coach, and he's coached just about every position on the offense. Greg Roman's had some extensive history with offenses and had some pretty unique history with offenses, including being OC for the 49ers during the Kaepernick era. He was the offensive coordinator for the Ravens during the Lamar MVP era. So dude has seen some stuff. He is, like a lot of other guys, including Matt LaFleur, into the whole illusion of complexity thing. He says, we don't run plays, we run concepts, and the defense determines who gets it. He likes to play heavy, 12, 13, and even 22 personnel. You'll see 6 offensive linemen and even jumbo sets and critical downs. So he likes big, power, strong, all that kind of stuff. For quarterbacks, he likes mobile, decisive, strong in play action. Doesn't need elite precision, just good processing and toughness. Sounds like we got the right quarterback. Running backs, one-cut, downhill runners. We got that guy. Tight ends, the centerpiece, must block motion and run routes. Roman loves tight end heavy formations. We got a guy. Wide receivers, complementary, physical, willing blockers, yak-focused, big body slot types fit best. We do have those. We have a lot of guys that you could say fit that. It is interesting to think about a big slot type of a player, though, maybe to add to the offense. Offensive line, smart, powerful, cohesive unit. Communication and combo block timing matter more than pure athleticism. might even be looking for a fullback in this offense. The combo of Minter, big, strong, physical, Midwest, Michigan defense, and Greg Roman with the big, strong, smash-mouth physical offense, you're looking at a team that's built to play in January, in Lambeau, in the cold. As for the pick, it's kind of tough. Couple options. One option would be to draft a tight end, which seems kind of stupid because we already have Tucker Kraft, but we very much need 2 tight ends. You could say Musgrave, but I don't know, especially since I don't know that that's the right type of tight end for what we would need. Max Clare, tight end out of Ohio State, is a very solid option in terms of being a great fit. Fits the mold of like a YF hybrid, inline blocker, good seam or red zone option. But I don't think I want to do that. It seems a little odd for your first pick, especially not having a first-round pick, to be a low-value position at a position where we already have a really good player. So I can't get myself to do that. Another potential option would be Chris Bell, wide receiver out of Louisville. 6'2", 215 pounds, big bully slot receiver. Just kind of a big wide receiver tight end hybrid to play as sort of a big slot. I think the issue I have is we have wide receivers. We have big, strong yak receivers. We got speed receivers. We also have Reed, who is not the right type of slot guy for, apparently what we're looking for, but we're not getting rid of him. So I think it'd be better if we just kind of adapt than say, well, he doesn't fit, so too bad. That kind of brings me to the defense, and there is a chance we'd be switching back to a 3-4, which I know is very annoying, but that's typically the way that they run their defense. I don't think it would be that big of a deal. We obviously have the pass rushers that can handle it. We have the linebackers and corners and safeties. The only thing that would be kind of a problem would be the defensive tackles, which is kind of a problem anyway. And it's really the same thing we've been looking for anyway, which is that big run-defending nose tackle. And so with that, with the first pick, the Green Bay Packers and Jesse Minter will select 6'1", 320 pounds, Dante the Godfather Corleone, yes, that's really his last name, defensive tackle out of Cincinnati. He's been described as a gap merchant, first team all Big 12, massive nose tackle that immediately is going to be able to plug in that spot as we have guys like Wyatt and whatnot occupy as the defensive ends. And of course, you got Rashawn Gary and Van Ness, and of course, Micah Parsons to play outside linebacker, and away we go. So, look, I hadn't even considered really doing something like this, but there were so many calls about, being mad at LaFleur and all this kind of stuff, and I thought, you know what, let's just play with it. Because similar to after 2 weeks when I said, enjoy it because I don't know how long this is going to last, it's kind of the same here. We're going up against a bad opponent, and we're going back home. It's entirely possible that after this, I'm not making any kind of prediction, God forbid, but it's entirely possible we beat this team by 60 points, and everything changes, and any talk about the draft or getting a new coach or whatever goes bye-bye. So maybe this is our one chance to do it, so let's go ahead and explore it, all right? With that said, I'm out of here. By the way, if the Bills lose, which they're down right now 20-10, my son is responsible for that. He came into this slate of games saying he doesn't want any undefeated teams or winless teams. All the winless teams except the Jets won, and the Eagles lost. And if the Bills lose, then he pretty much got his wish, with the exception of the Jets. Wild stuff. Also, there goes our Brady head coach, huh? Anyways, I'm out of here. You all have a good rest of your day. I'll talk to you tonight, tomorrow, whatever. Have a good one. Bye-bye.
Still number 21. Still making plays, yeah, the job ain't done. Green and gold on my back, I run. Still 21, still 21.
Yeah, came from the Bay, but I found my home. In the frozen tundra, made Lambeau my zone. 2006, they knew what I could bring. 7 years later, got a championship ring. Still intercepting like it's nothing new. 33 years old, defensive player too. Young cats thinking that I lost a step, but I'm still out here collecting every rep. Film study Monday, dominate on Sunday. They thought it was over, but I do it my way. From the West Coast swagger to Wisconsin pride. Number 21 jersey, that's my battle cry.
Still number 21.
21.
Still making plays, yeah, the job ain't done.
Never.
Green and gold on my back, I run.
Always.
Still 21, still 21.
Legend. Nowadays, everybody wanna talk like they got something to say, but nothing comes out when they move their lips. Just a bunch of receivers I put on their hips. Secondary lockdown, coverage so tight. Pick 6 coming, yeah, that's every night. Super Bowl 45, Dallas, Texas stage. Brought that Lombardi back, turned another page. They say West Coast, I say Green Bay Packers. Free safety corner blitz, I'm a multitasker. Hall of Fame speech, Canton gold jacket gleaming. But I'm still that same cat, still chasing the dream, man. Where I'm from,
Where I'm at,
where I'm at.
what's the number to the belly?
Oh, we got it. So what's the difference between me and you? What? I got Super Bowl ring with the green and gold crew. 2009 MVP on defense. Age just a number, I'm still intense. From the practice field to the game day lights. Lambeau Leap moments on them Sunday nights. Leadership presence, better in the room. Young cats learning how a legend makes boom. Still got that Oakland in my DNA. But Green Bay made me in a different way. Number 21 retired and the rafters high. West Coast legend with that Midwest pride.
Yeah. Still number 21.
21.
Still making plays, yeah, the job ain't done.
Never done.
Green and gold on my back, I run.
I run it.
Still 21, still 21.
Legendary. 20 great.